This is NBC.
It is frightening how easy it is to con people.
I got the money for him on a Friday. I think I gave it to him on a Saturday. I think he disappeared on a Sunday.
And it was also the very next day that he borrowed the next $25,000.
And it was very obvious that Teresa had gone a world-class shopping binge with the money she'd gotten.
They strip people of their dignity, and they don't have the courage to do it face-to-face.
For 10 years of crimes against people, I spent 70 days in jail.
Welcome back to Too Good to Be True, the program that proves what you already know. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Hi, I'm Fred Roggin. Your response to our first show was overwhelming. Many of you wanted to share with us the ripoffs and con games you've confronted. Some of you thanked us for alerting you to new scams. So we're back to demonstrate that the word con, as in con artist or con game, is short for confidence. Tonight you will see how a true con artist, man or woman, can win anyone's confidence. Anyone's. The eyes of Texas were upon her, but did she rob them blind? See how Teresa Rodriguez spent nearly $30 million she allegedly fleeced from Houston socialites. What's 10 feet tall, goes 30 miles an hour, and tastes yummy? Why, it's the hottest investment opportunity of the 90s, and people are flocking to get in on it. Tennis pro Hal Kaplan had a great racket. He seduced his 9 wives with lavish gifts, bought with other people's money. On Chicago's fabled North Shore, you are what you wear. Aaron Gams wore surgical scrubs and a stethoscope and was able to get a house, a Porsche, a BMW, and lots of nice things to wear. You've already heard his pitch. Now meet the man who invented the biggest phone fraud in history.
Congratulations! You're a guaranteed winner of one of 4 prizes. Have you ever won anything major before? Well, you have now.
He calls himself John T., and he may have been America's most wanted phone bandit. You see, John T. invented the 4 fabulous prizes con and a number of other popular phone scams which you probably heard of and may have fallen for. A telemarketing fraud is a $60 billion a year business, and it's only limited by the imagination. Phone bandits will do anything and say anything to steal your money, even drop the name of a legitimate charity into their come-on for a phony charity.
Well, what's happened is the Red Cross has just been overwhelmed by the earthquake this year and the fires, and now they don't have enough supplies to help those tornado victims. Can you imagine what it would be like to lose your home, to lose everything during the holiday season? And there's a lot of children involved here. So if you can only just help us with $50 or $100, we can put blankets on the children, we can give them something for the holidays to play with, and we can feed the family.
They're so convincing, you know, what they tell you and how they tell you and how they try and lead you on and draw you out a little bit and make you sure you're going to win this prize.
Older people are the most vulnerable, especially to telephone campaigns launched from boiler rooms.
What they start out with and what they emphasize through the whole pitch is, you did it, you've come out in the #1 position, you are the most fortunate man or lady alive.
You are the winner of a 1994 prize.
Mr. Johnston, you have won a brand new remote control VCR.
Boiler rooms are set up to generate excitement. That's why you will find that they will space people 3 feet apart from each other, normally have at least 10, 15, 20 people in the same room. What that does is forces the con artist to put their finger in their ear and listen to the person that they're talking to on the other end of the phone.
The only thing we need, Mr. Watson, is $400 for tax, shipping, and handling purposes.
But when they find someone who will listen to their pitch and who will then send $300, $400, $500 for some beauty products and a hope of winning a substantial prize, they know they found a potential victim. And that's not where the money is made in the boiler room. What happens then is that victim's name is sent upstairs to a person called a reloader. they earn higher commissions, and that's where the real damage is done. Those are the people that bring in tens of thousands of dollars with a single phone call.
They will earn more money than they've ever earned before in their life. They'll be introduced to a lifestyle that Hollywood glamorizes, with the fast cars and the beautiful women. By the time they realize what they're doing is wrong, they're caught up in the fast track. They have no conscience anymore.
There are people who don't have the courage to push down an old lady in the street and take her purse. Instead, they hide behind a phone and use a fake name and hide where they're calling from. But the result is the same. They strip people of their dignity, and they don't have the courage to do it face to face.
There was one time period in there where I got as many as four or five of these telemarketing calls a day. That's when I started recording all these calls.
You are guaranteed one of those four prizes.
They all sound wonderful.
It's a brand new Saturn or your choice of $10,000 in cash.
We have found that tape-recorded conversations are the single best source of evidence against telemarketers.
Well, yeah, I understand and appreciate what you're saying. You know, the thing of it is we certainly wouldn't invite you right out here to corporate headquarters here in Las Vegas for you to chase us around the office with a baseball bat.
And he's saying, well, we wouldn't invite you up to Las Vegas. That's what I was saying in 1978. We wouldn't invite you to Las Vegas if this wasn't real. So what happens here is now you've got somebody who's new on the phone, who couldn't make the sale, who turns it over to somebody who's a professional, who is then going to pound the victim into purchasing something.
The telemarketers that I've talked to always tell me they're looking for Mabel, 73 years old, living in Iowa in a farm community, who's been widowed for 2 years and who has very little idea how to run the finances because her husband always did that for her. That is the perfect victim for a telemarketer.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, okay. Now, hold on a minute. Okay, now who do I make it out to?
One of our victims in Seattle was fortunate enough to be serviced by a Federal Express driver who noticed what was going on. And this driver told Doug Shadell at AARP in Seattle, I think we have a problem here. This nice lady keeps sending off checks to promotional companies. Doug and I investigated. Emma had lost over $220,000 in an 18-month period. Had it not been for the Federal Express driver, I know that Emma would have lost every penny of her retirement savings.
All right, bye-bye. Drive carefully.
Heard about a lady the other day that lost $87,000 on just one call. The guy must have been really good. And some of these guys are smooth as can be. They could talk you out of your socks.
The most heinous crime that I've seen committed by con artists is something called the Alzheimer's scheme. What happens is they will purchase lists of people over the age of 70 and then call with a phony survey. They'll call back the next day to see if the person remembered the conversation from the day before. If they didn't, then they get a phone call a couple days later. Hello, Joe. This is Jerry Daniels. Scamco Wireless Cable. What happened to that $10,000 you said you were going to send in for that 1% share? Now, I went out on a limb for you. I put your name in for that 1%. What happened? Now we find Joe, who's been very forgetful. He's got Alzheimer's disease. Is too embarrassed to talk to anyone about it, thinks he actually had the conversation, and sends away the money.
Sometimes elderly people are lonely, and these con men or phone swindlers actually have taken the time to talk with them on the phone.
My grandmother lives there, yeah.
Do you know what you said? That you sounded exactly like my mother.
The pitchman literally spent 9 months calling this woman in Florida who was a widow in her 70s and basically romanced her over the phone like she was his mother. He literally sent her roses, called her on her birthday, checked in every once in a while to make sure she was doing fine, and then he closed the trap on her and just cleaned her out.
Oh, thanks for asking. My daughter is doing beautifully. She got that house in Tacoma.
Older people should beware of people who are trying to be too personal with them. A stranger calls you on the phone bear in mind, they're calling you because they want to sell you something. They want your money.
If someone calls and tells you you've won something wonderful or you have a lovely award coming to you, you can bet it's a scam.
The best advice is just hang up the phone and forget it, because you're not going to get anything. You're going to lose.
Tell them something like, can you hang on a minute? There's someone at the door. Set the phone on the counter for 20 minutes. The con artist will wait for 5 minutes. If that happens a few times every day to the con artist, that affects their attitude, and they might go get a real job.
John T. finally went to prison for fraud. But now he's in a different line of work. He goes around the country teaching senior citizens how not to get ripped off by phone bandits. Next, rich, smart women thought Hal Kaplan was the best thing that ever happened to them. Just ask his 9 wives.
Oh, he was garrulous. He was fun to be with. Caring, and I don't know anybody that couldn't do with a great dose of adoration. He was all of those things. When your cup runneth over, watcheth out.
Then, psst, come here. Want to get in on the next boom market?
If you're thinking about getting off your business, jump.
Guy knew it was too good to be true.
Plus, Aaron Gams could con anyone. Even a presidential campaign.
The people who ran the Ross Perot campaign had no idea what happened to a lot of the money that Mr. Gams was in charge of.
Is fruit male or female? Well, is it soft? Is it colorful? Is it tempting? And does it stay where it ought to? This fruit does. It's fruit that does what it says, stays comfortably in place. Fruit that'll spoil you. Fruit of the loom, always in season.
To get to the 1996 Olympic Games, you don't have to swim, throw, run, flip, or slam. All you gotta do is walk to Mickey D's. Buy a double Big Mac or a double Quarter Pounder with cheese for 79 cents more than the famous originals. Pull the tab and bam! You could win one of 100 trips to the 1996 Olympic Games, a pair of Reebok athletic shoes, or thousands of other great prizes. And everybody gets at least $5 off Reebok shoes, so get to Mickey D's.
Have you had your break today?
I can't believe this report is due this afternoon. What is that?
Craft-free Italian.
You carry Italian dressing in your purse.
Hey, I love Italian.
Obviously.
You want some?
No, thank you. No, it's too much fat.
Oh, no, this is craft-free. See, fat-free, cholesterol-free.
This sounds great.
Just try it.
Craft-free Italian non-fat dressing. If it tastes too good to be fat-free, it's craft-free.
Wonder if they make ranch. What? They do?
Jonathan and I both have new shows on this fall on Thursday nights. Mine's called Caroline in the City, and his is The Single Guy. And
we were wondering, how'd you crack the top 10? I think the most important thing is to have a one-word title. You know, like Friends or Seinfeld.
You mean ER?
Oh, okay. That makes much more sense.
The Single Guy and Caroline in the City. Thursdays this fall on NBC.
Well, we could change our name to Caroline.
And we could call mine Guy. Just Guy.
Everyone on the private club circuit loved tennis pro Hal Kaplan, a president's daughter, a Saudi prince, an Oscar-winning movie producer. Divorced women especially adored Hal. He was attentive, kind, caring to their children, and always lavished plenty of cash on them. Cash he generally took from a previous victim. Women just fell into his arms. Then they fell into his hands. Lindy Gold is smart, sophisticated, successful, and extremely popular in her hometown of New Haven, Connecticut. Not a likely victim for a con man.
Yet, I was taken. And certainly by a professional does not make it easier. I don't consider myself naive then, maybe too trusting.
The man who won Lindy's trust was this one, Hal Kaplan. Using the name Hal Lansky, he arrived in New Haven and began frequenting this restaurant, also favored by Lindy and her friends.
A waitress came to the table and told me that Hal wanted to buy me a drink. I thought she had the wrong person, And she said, no, it was specifically for me. And I said, well, thank whoever it is very much anyway. I don't know any person called Hal. We were leaving, and on my way out, a friend of mine stopped me to say hello and introduced me to his friend named Hal. He said, well, it's more than obvious you don't take drinks from strangers, but now that we've met, why don't you let me buy you a drink? And I just looked at him and said, didn't it ever occur to you that if I'd wanted a drink, I would have bought one? And I left. Later that evening, my friend called and said his friend Hal wanted to take me out. It was really quite a quick romance. There were a lot of things going on in my life just then. And he really appeared to be Mr. Wonderful. Oh, he was garrulous, he was fun to be with, caring, and I don't know anybody that couldn't do with a great dose of adoration. He was all of those things. He really created a wonderful human being. Talked about giving the way that I talk about it. He knew all the right buttons to push.
The first time I met him was in the winter of 1991. And at that time, my thoughts were, Lindy's got a new husband, and she was happy.
He introduced himself as the illegitimate son, the nephew of Meyer Lansky, that he was the answer to where all of the missing Lansky fortune was. Told all of my friends that wonderful stories about the Lanskys and talked about having money for 10 lifetimes.
I learned at a later date that he was bragging around that he was the nephew of Meyer Lansky. And at that time, that's when I drew my suspicions of him. Seeing Lindy appeared to be very happy with him and jovial, and I didn't share my thoughts with her at that time, no.
He told my friends that my wife can have anything she wants. I'm not a particularly acquisitive person, but it certainly is a comforting thought.
Despite his apparent wealth, Hal told Lindy he was experiencing a cash flow problem.
Actually, I first loaned Hal money before we were married. He told me that he was under investigation, or his companies were, by Internal Revenue, and that he really didn't want to move large sums of money around, that this had almost reached a settlement state, and that he had promised two partners in a restaurant money with which to rehab a building in New York and to go forward with their investment.
That $25,000 loan probably went to support the affluent lifestyle Hal carried on to attract his victims. Even so, it wasn't nearly enough to pay for the surprise Christmas gift he gave Lindy.
And there before my eyes were a black and a white identical Mercedes pair of sports cars, one that was for my sister and one that was for me as a holiday gift. It was overwhelming. I went to sign the papers the very next day, and it was also the very next day that he borrowed the next $25,000. It didn't strike me as strange because of his prior explanations to me. After all, here a man had just given me a gift worth over $100,000. Another loan of $25,000 didn't seem terribly consequential.
Lindy didn't know that her adoring husband paid for the car with money he borrowed from her sister's husband, who paid for both cars. She only found that out when Hal disappeared.
I didn't hear from him Thursday. I didn't hear from him Friday. And my real investigation started because I was very concerned about his health and safety. I never expected to turn up what I turned up. That this man was a career criminal who had served lots of time, or little bits of time in lots of jails. That he had been married about 11 times. That he was a con artist, a thief.
Before he met Lindy, Hal spent 20 years in California practicing his con games on men and women.
He was actually a very fine teacher, but I wouldn't call him a great tennis pro as a player. But he was a great con artist. He really was. He conned me, I'll tell you that.
Although Lindy and Hal played tennis daily, she had no idea of his former life as a respected tennis professional, teaching Maureen Reagan and others of the rich and famous in Southern California.
He said his name was Hal Lawrence, and that he had taught at a lot of famous clubs, like at Forest Hills Country Club, which is, you know, where there are nationals being played. And that impressed me. And he was very good at the way he said it. So that's why I hired him.
I knew him as Hal Kaplan. My first recollection of meeting him was at our tennis club. He had just become a tennis pro instructor at the club. After we had taken lessons from Hal for, well, I should say for quite a while, when he approached me one day and mentioned to me about this friend of his who is a dentist in San Jose that was opening some new dental offices, and Hal had helped him in the past in opening these offices, lent him money. He asked me if I would be willing to go in with him because he couldn't afford to do it all on his own. And I said, yeah, I would go along and help on a short-term basis like that. And the loan was made directly to Hal Kaplan at the tennis club. He wanted it in cash, which should have been an indication for me right away. You don't normally do things like that. I got the money for him on a Friday. I think I gave it to him on a Saturday. I think he disappeared on a Sunday. So it was very close in there.
The amount Hal borrowed was $11,000.
He could have made that much money very easily at the club or doing tennis lessons on the side. I would anticipate the man could easily make $100,000 or better a year just in tennis teaching alone.
But teaching tennis was vital to Kaplan's game plan for swindling and seduction. So, as a condition of his parole in California, he had to promise not to come within 1,000 feet of a tennis court. Not an easy thing to do in Beverly Hills. Maybe that's why Hal changed rackets and headed east to Connecticut, where he met up with Lindy Lee Gold, who eventually proved to be more than a match for him.
He came back saying that the feds had seized everything and that the Internal Revenue investigation had exploded. Unbeknownst to him or any of his partners, all of his properties were seized, and that the reason he had left was because he was too embarrassed to tell me that he had nothing left. By this time, I really knew, and if you will, I did a reverse sting. I was in touch with Hal. He had expected to meet me. I knew precisely where he was, and at that point, the police arrested him. They appeared there in my stead. He had no idea that I knew anything.
I entered the bar. I observed him at the bar. I went up to him. As I walked towards him, this is the type of person he was, only meeting me on a few occasions. He turned to me and said, "Hey, how you doing, Bill?" He knew who people were around him at all times. I placed him under arrest. I had a warrant for his arrest. I handcuffed him and took him from the bar.
That was at the very restaurant at which we had met. There is some irony to all of this, and if you will, a little bit of humor as well. I had to expose this man, and I had to stop him for whatever little while I could through our legal system, prevent him from doing this to anyone else.
This was one court where Lindy aced the tennis pro. Hal pleaded guilty to 4 counts of larceny and forgery and was ordered to pay back more than $100,000 to his victims. And because he's a career criminal, Kaplan was sentenced to 15 years in the penitentiary. The pro has turned con. Let me tell you about the very rich. They fall for get-rich-quick schemes just like anybody else.
The group of investors were laughingly tagged the not-so-smart set.
And still to come on Too Good to Be True, what's the next hot trend in food? Ostrich. It's what's for dinner.
I mean, if we eat turkeys, we can eat ostriches. There's no two ways about it.
Today, bad breath is polluting our air. Now's the time for Big Minty Certs, the only mint with Retsin to freshen breath. Freshen your breath, save the air, have a Certs.
Staph bacteria can live almost anywhere. Ow! That's why every cut needs Neosporin. Neosporin kills germs and helps cuts heal 4 days faster. Use Neosporin to help heal cuts faster.
Pine Sol Helpline.
I love the smell of pine salt, but my husband likes lemon.
Try Lemon Fresh Pine Sol Cleaner. It has the scent of lemon and the power of pine sol.
He'll love that. Now, if he only liked Mother.
Oh, honey, that's a whole nother helpline.
Before he made Wendy's new Smoky Bacon Cheeseburger, Dave had a lot to do. Smoke the hickory smoked bacon, slice the smoked cheddar, saute the onions, plus cook a quarter pound of fresh beef, and then put it all together.
It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of sandwich.
Too Good to Be True. We'll be right back.
Sunday, mythical gods, great thinkers, and ruthless warriors. The birthplace of the Olympics. The golden age of Greece. Lost Civilization, 7, 6 Central. NBC Sunday.
The most bizarre murder mystery that ever went to trial.
You're gonna set me free.
Beverly D'Angelo, Peter Strauss, Jill Clayburgh. Trial, The Price of Passion. NBC Sunday.
Tonight on News 4 New York at 11, the silent danger in your child's school.
This is Gabe Pressman. News 4 finds possible lead hazard in a Bronx school.
Also at 11, this old scam.
Do you do unfair work?
Not at all.
Watch as hired home improvement workers are caught in the act of an alleged scam and sabotage. Then, refugees fighting to survive. News 4's Tiwa Cheng reports from the battlefields of Bosnia on the struggle to stay alive. Plus, hot and dangerous. From ozone alerts to power warnings, what you need to know. Right here at 11.
I have very little news. This new Hellmann's low-fat mayonnaise dressing has very little fat, only 1 gram. But there's big news about taste. You won't believe that 1 gram of fat can taste so enormously rich, so colossally creamy, so hugely delicious. New Hellmann's low-fat, very little fat, very, whoa, big taste.
Bring out the Hellmann's and bring out the best.
These cinematographers have all won Academy Awards. They all use Kodak film. In fact, over 90% of all Hollywood features are shot on Kodak film, including all of this year's nominees for Best Picture. What film is in your camera?
Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons, only on 4 New York.
Welcome back to Too Good to Be True. In Houston, socialites are asking themselves, if you're so rich, how come you're not smart? Well, some of the city's oldest and wealthiest families, and some of the youngest and now poorest families, allegedly lost $30 million to an upstart named Teresa Rodriguez. Teresa threw fabulous parties where she allegedly promised fabulous returns for investing in her minority-owned businesses. Well, some victims say she told them that everyone would get rich or even richer at the expense of the federal government.
I first heard of Teresa Rodriguez when she was named Hispanic Businesswoman of the Year. Several months later, someone sent her name in as being cited at a restaurant. And the person she was cited with was the mayor's wife. So I made another note thinking of the Hispanic Businesswoman of the Year obviously is making fast tracks.
In 1988, my mom passed away. We had a wrongful death case that went on for about 4 years. And we finally won. A friend of mine was in this investment, which I wasn't too familiar with. I knew he was in an investment. I knew he was making some money. I was curious about it and asked him if I could possibly get into it. And he said he would have to speak with the lady, see if she would meet with me. When I walked into the office, you know, everything was real nice. The desk was nice. Her white nuts was nice. The way she dressed, it was nice. Every little hair was in perfect order. Her jewelry, her rings. But when she started talking, it wasn't the same person I was looking at. She said that the government needed so many thousand hammers, and she paid like $1 a piece for them when she turned around and sold them to the government for $10 a piece. And so when she told me that, you know, I felt pretty comfortable on how she could guarantee me that 10% a month.
I don't think the people really give a damn on how the money is being invested once they're told they're going to get a high rate of interest.
Teresa, if there's any reason why you think I should not invest this money, you don't have to explain why, you don't have to answer any questions, I won't ask you any questions, so just shake your head yes or no. I'll walk out of this office and we'll never have to speak again.
Jason said, hey, you know, if there's any reason, I went through, excuse me, but I went through hell to get this money. I went through 4 years with lawyers battling out with hospitals and this about my mother. You know, don't do it. It's just like, well, you know, if you have a bad feeling about it, don't do it, you know. She didn't. She knew what she was doing. She didn't care.
After I invested with her, the first month I was real nervous, and she was going to send our checks out in the mail, and instead of waiting for the mail, I went to the office and picked it up, and left straight from the office, straight to the bank, and cashed it. It was December of '92, and went to the Christmas party, and when I went in, she introduced me to the mayor and his wife.
There was a lot of other people there that I didn't know, but I knew that they were prominent people here in Houston. You know, it was a real nice party. I mean, lots of nice things. Of course, she was doing her la-di-da thing, you know, her jewelry, her clothes, things like that. She really didn't say too much to me. She always, you know, acted like she was just a little bit better. If you go to a party, you know, and your mayor's there and there's, you know, Patrick Swayze or whoever's there, of course, you're not going to think this lady is, you know, bad. She was better, businesswoman of the year, you know. Why would you give that to somebody if you didn't believe in her? The investors weren't the only ones that believed in her.
If you give in this town $10,000 to one organization, if you don't think that every single person working for every other charity in this town doesn't know that someone named Teresa Rodriguez just wrote a check for $10,000 and gave it to XYZ, they're all on the phone. They all want to meet her. They all want her contribution to their charity.
I first heard about Teresa Rodriguez when I was sitting in my office and received a phone call from a young lady that had once been in my class. She called me and said, Mr. Pankow, I'm scared. I work for a doctor. I've worked for him 17 years, and he's now told me to write a check for $300,000, our entire employee pension fund, and make it out to this TR Financial and Teresa Rodriguez. I went on the computer, and the first thing I did was check several public records. I went to see first how many corporations he's filed, and I saw a number of corporations, none of which were in the phone book, had telephone listings, had business records, or showed up in any of the places you would think a business normally would. The IRS had a $500,000 lien, a $700,000 lien, and there was other records of other indications of lawsuits and other actions that said, whoa, buddy, something's wrong with this picture.
I believe it was my birthday, April 14th. I remember waking up, going to the front door, and opening the door and getting the newspaper off the front doorstep, unfolded it, and she was on the front page. It read IRS seizes Parks Board members, jewelry, furs, etc. And at that time, my stomach just turned upside down. I almost got sick. And immediately, I called the office, her office, requesting my funds be withdrawn from the account.
When they conducted the raid and the seizure on Teresa's house, it was like opening King Tut's tomb. It was unbelievable. There was just rooms full of gold, silver, jewelry, millions of dollars worth of things, some of them with the price tags still on them. And it was very obvious that Teresa had gone a world-class shopping binge with the money she'd gotten.
She had the best-known names in merchandise, from Chanel bags to Hermes to Gucci and leather goods, full-length chinchillas, full-length minks, short chinchillas. And in Houston, when you wear a mink coat, is when you have to turn the air conditioning down. We don't get cold enough for 8 or 10 or 15 mink coats.
She bought all that with my money and every other investor's money. She has no right to any of it, you know.
The government's allegations against Ms. Rodriguez are simply that she engaged in a pattern of mail-in wire fraud to defraud investors with regard to investments in government contracts by allegedly taking their money and not investing the money that was originally given to her as allegedly agreed to, but by using the funds for her own purposes and by diverting the funds back to new investors.
The group of investors were laughingly tagged the not-so-smart set when all of us thought it was a huge group of bold-faced types, the recognizable names that are always in the newspaper. From the rumor mongers and all the mongering, it included everybody that was anybody in this town. Subsequently, it did not turn out to be that many.
When someone comes along, like Teresa or other people like her, and promises them they're going to make that kind of return, and the fact that they say it's guaranteed by the U.S. government ices the cake. So here they've got a deal, they're going to double their money every year, and they count, well, my 100,000 makes 200,000 in 1 year, the 200,000 makes 400,000 in 2 years, and the 400,000 makes 800,000 in 3 years, I can retire. And it just locks them right in. They just go for it. And they don't realize, well, what happens if I lose it all? I've got nothing.
We basically lost everything, you know. We couldn't live the lifestyle we were living. We couldn't pay our bills. We had to move out of our house, sell a lot of things that we had to try to pay off some of the debts, you know, phone bills, things like that that we had acquired. He winded up moving to Galveston. I moved to Katy. It split us up. It was devastating to us. It's still devastating.
The money, the surroundings, the glamour, everybody around me, everything just clicked, and I went along with it.
She knew where we got our money from. She knew. And, you know, to see her on TV right now and, you know, to see her lawyer fighting for her, you know, saying she didn't do anything wrong, which she did.
In Houston, when you say that's old money, that means it was made yesterday. New money is made today. And we're not ashamed of it. It might seem brash, but that's the way the city was built, and successfully so. So when someone comes along, be it a Teresa Rodriguez or whoever, and offers an idea that seems a little quirky, with an enormous return on investment, you might question it, but then again, you might say, why not? And obviously a lot of people said, why not?
Teresa's appetite for luxury was as big as Texas itself. She owned 30 furs, 100 pairs of shoes, 56 Judith Lieber handbags, some costing over $10,000 each. She had fine silver and china service for $144. That's gross. She bought a coffee table made out of Baccarat crystal, nearly $3 million in jewels, and millions more in antique furniture, all of it museum quality. And now, she's looking at a museum of federal charges, 36 in all, including wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. Teresa's lawyer says she'll plead not guilty to all the charges.
Just ahead on Too Good to Be True, they convinced investors that big birds would produce big profits, then ran away with their money.
When someone presents a proposal that sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Then this con man played one-on-one with one of the richest towns in America, and it was no contest.
Aaron Gems was able to walk into Lake Forest and essentially charge things on house charge accounts with nothing more than a stethoscope around his neck to prove that he was a doctor.
How would you feel about a hair color that's actually good for your hair? Natural Instincts by Claro. Natural Instincts is the first hair color with a rare blend of natural ingredients. Aloe, chamomile, ginseng. And Natural Instincts actually leaves your hair better conditioned than before you colored it. Natural Instincts by Claro.
To get to the 1996 Summer Olympic Games, you could start training now or take a break. Play McDonald's Olympic Games giveaway. Just buy a double Big Mac and you could win one of 100 trips to the 1996 Olympic Games.
She's a strong person, someone who can smile through most anything. But sometimes you just can't close your eyes to the aches anymore. When the pain outlasts the Tylenol and you've tried Advil, you try your doctor, see what she recommends.
She said take a leave every 8 to 12 hours.
A fast-acting form of the medicine naproxen.
A top prescription brand. At the end of the day, a leave's stronger relief than a dose of Advil, longer lasting than extra strength Tylenol. She's tougher than I'll ever be.
Women usually are.
Aleve, all day strong, all day long.
For $30,000, you could get a Mercedes C220 and finish the quarter mile in a time of 17 seconds. For $43,000, you could get a Lexus GS 300 and finish with a slightly better time. Or for $15,000, you could get a Nissan Altima, save a great deal of money, and have the best time of all. Now lease the Altima GXE for $0 down and $249 a month for 36 months.
Plus CTV, NBC.
It's a special NBC Thursday, starting with Mad About You.
Snappy garments. And a lovely jacket yourself.
Then Friends is on 1 hour earlier.
How do I look? I don't care.
And it's an uplifting Seinfeld.
You want me to wear a bra? A bra is for ladies. Meet the bro.
And Phil Hartman's smoking on News Radio.
So just sip your sniveling little lip and haul your skinny ass out of here!
News Radio on a special night, NBC Thursday.
It was touted as the investment opportunity of a lifetime. Get it on the ground floor of the next boom market in trendy eating. Think of it. A delicious red meat that's lower in calories, fat, and cholesterol than chicken. It costs a fraction of what beef costs to raise. Well, some investors bet the ranch, putting everything they had on the fastest fast food there is.
The Roadrunner on steroids. That's what the flightless ostrich looks like when he's flat out at 30 miles an hour. And Wile E. Coyote isn't going to mess with a speeding bird who can grow to 10 feet tall and 300 pounds. The ostrich is worth his weight in gold for the meat, skin, and feathers. And best of all, you don't have to do any work to cash in on the big bird bonanza. At least that's what Wiley, Gary, and Deborah Peterson claimed.
They would raise the birds. They would have the property. They would have the expertise. They would have the vets being able to work. We could still live in the city. They were able to take care of all the product. After Gary told me about the ostrich farm in Canyon City, that was one that we could look at as an example of seeing chicks and seeing full mature male and females in their pens. I took a drive down there, and it was impressive.
So what he would do is he would show mathematically how you could start with a pair of ostrich chicks, and if within 2 years they laid 40 to 50 eggs, they would be, to where they could breed. Then they would do 40 or 50. Well, the numbers got astounding.
Of course, urgency is always pushed. Urgency in the fact that the birds are going to increase in price. They're going to be $3,500 today. If you wait another 15, 20 days, they could be $4,000.
Just because someone is talking about a general industry or a general product, that doesn't mean that they are people who can capitalize on it. So Peterson was extremely successful in using general statistics to convince people that he could take advantage of this ostrich market for them.
Our initial investment was $7,000, and for that, they were going to raise the birds, house, feed, etc. When the birds reached maturity and started laying eggs, then we would split the eggs. I would get the first as the investor.
The Petersons had no experience, as far as we know, having anything to do with raising ostriches. It was very easy for them to sell the idea, but they had no follow-through. They weren't well capitalized. They had no experience raising it.
He calls up and said that he's got an opportunity to buy 40 chicks and that he'd like to borrow $40,000. Well, I still had no idea that I was going to be defrauded, and I actually thought about it. He could have got $40,000 from somebody else that I'm unaware of.
In fact, the Petersons did get the 40 grand, but ironically, it didn't come from city slickers. It came from an old ostrich hand looking to beef up his herd.
Gary Peterson advertised in the Ostrich News, and every month I get the magazine, I'd flip through it trying to find some birds, and everybody called didn't have any. So I tried him, and he had some.
Gary was a very good listener. He listened to everything Randy had told him, and you know, he went from there as far as what Randy was looking for, what type of birds, what age, and he was always calling that he could get a hold of this bird or that bird for us.
The first 2 pair of birds, when I bought them, they was $18,000 a pair. And I sent him $18,000, and it took about a month before I got the birds, but I got them.
I feel he used the first birds as bait to trap us into, you know, he delivered good stuff knowing that we were going to be wanting more, and we'd put a large order in for more birds.
The winners put a $42,000 deposit down for more ostriches, but they never saw the birds, their money, or the Petersons. And in Denver, other investors also were starting to pull their heads out of the sand.
The first time that I walked into the office of Colorado Ostrich Farm, I was shocked. Very barren. Nothing on the walls. The desks, hard metal, nothing going on. A few illustrations on a blackboard, and that was it. And at that point, I started getting a weird feeling about what was really going on.
There are folks that prey on good people, not just in this industry, but every industry. And when the prices get to the point that we've seen in the ostrich industry, it attracts them. And people just need to be careful. But if you're going to buy ostrich, you need to know something about raising livestock.
It's important to be wary of anything for which there is not an established market, so that any kind of animal or plant where people say there is a market and you know there isn't, because you can't go to the market and buy ostrich meat. And if you went to the leather store and asked them, where did this ostrich skin briefcase come from, and they don't know, or they'll say Australia or Africa or somewhere, or Japan or wherever, it's a pretty good signal that there really isn't a market.
Not that that would stop Gary Peterson.
The Oklahoma authorities asked him if he was still thinking of doing ostrich farming anymore. He said, nah, ostriches are out now. The guy said, well, what's in? And Mr. Peterson responded, water buffalo.
Ostriches can't fly, but the Petersons sure did. They fled Colorado after Gary's conviction for securities fraud and before Deborah's trial on the same charges. The law calls that unlawful flight, and the Petersons were arrested 6 weeks later in Oklahoma City. Gary was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and Deborah received 10. So now they're both, what else? Jailbirds.
In America, you can become anything you want. Aaron Gams became a cardiologist, a wealthy venture capitalist, a famous race car driver, and a psychiatrist just by saying so.
He even duped his own psychiatrist by taking his psychiatrist business card and using that business card to create a business card for himself as a psychiatrist.
Who taught you how to shave your legs? Your mother?
You start with a bar of soap, work up a good lather.
Sometimes I use your father's shaving foam.
Skintimate Shave Gel has a rich blend of 8 moisturizers, including vitamin E. True, soap may dry your skin.
Skintimate protects against the nicks and dryness a soap and water shave can cause.
These little bandages are a perfect fit.
Skintimate Shave Gel. There's no softer way to shave.
Though we gotta say goodbye for the summer.
For $14.99, KFC gives you your choice of chicken, plus large mashed potatoes, gravy, any other large side, biscuits, honey barbecue wings, and our new big and chocolatey Oreo brownies. You'd be crazy to cook, unless this is where you want to spend your summer.
Yes, we gotta say goodbye for the summer.
So come into our kitchen and get the new you'd be crazy to cook mega meal.
So what's the first law of automotive engineering? Nope, it's as horsepower goes up, fuel economy must come down. except in the new Oldsmobile LSS. Thanks to a redesigned 3800 Series 2 V6, not only does it have 20% more horsepower, it also gets better mileage. Well, not if you know what you're doing. It's your money.
Our rookie's been benched for dribbling out of bounds.
But wait, there's a substitution. Huggies Ultra Trim Diapers with new stretch size.
Amazing flexibility.
Incredibly snug.
Less gapping.
Better fit. Let's see that stretch again. Huggies new stretch really lets this player move.
It's a slam dunk against leaks that's sure to make Stretch a superstar.
And Huggies Ultra Trim, the diaper of champions.
Stay tuned for more Too Good to Be True.
NBC Saturday, Bob Hope opens his archives.
Thank you. I want to tell you.
Rare and never-before-seen footage commemorates the end of World War II, an all-new special NBC Saturday.
We showed you how some electronic stores rip you off.
I make special price.
Think they've cleaned up their act? Our hidden cameras return. This time, a bigger surprise. Don't miss an all-new Dateline NBC next.
You've seen us before, but never like this.
From top to bottom, we've given Sears a brand new look.
It's a new look.
From the smallest detail to the widest aisles.
From our coveralls and our workbench to our styles.
We kept the things you need and brought in more of the things you want. So the newest thing at Sears is Sears itself.
What a kick, what a splash, what a jolt, what a smash. It's all here. Come see the newest side of Sears.
Celebrate Sears' grand opening this Saturday at Woodbridge Center. Register for a chance to win a cruise for two to the Caribbean. From 9:30 to 11:30, meet New York Knicks forward center Charles Smith. And from 1 to 4, see Christopher Douglas from One Life to Live at Sears.
It's revolutionary. A bathroom tissue made to work wet or dry. Quilted Northern Wet or Dry. Soft, cushiony, quilted for comfort, and specially designed to hold up to water. So unlike other bathroom tissues, Quilted Northern Wet or Dry won't fall apart even if used wet. Quilted Northern Wet or Dry.
Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons, only on 4 New York.
People on Chicago's exclusive North Shore recalled their first meeting with Aaron Gams this way. Hello, he lied. Gams was a con man's con man. He lied to everybody. And for 2 years, everybody believed him. The luxury car dealer, the boutique owner, even the Ross Perot campaign. This was his target of opportunity, Lake Forest, Illinois. It's one of the wealthiest and most sophisticated suburbs in America. But people here tend to trust anyone who talks, dresses, and acts the way they do. So when Aaron Gams talked like a doctor, dressed like a doctor, and shopped like a doctor, folks just naturally assumed he was a doctor.
He began to go around to local businesses, and he represented himself to be a doctor, sometimes a cardiologist, at other times a psychiatrist. Various times people thought that he identified himself even as an investment broker or a stockbroker. And he then proceeded to dress the part wearing expensive clothing.
His first purchase was fairly small. If I recall, I think it was a sweater. Maybe a couple of things, maybe about $100 if I recall. When he came in for the third time, I believe, that's when he ran up a $600 bill.
Mr. Gams walked into a local North Shore car dealership. He told them that he was a cardiologist. He then proceeded to pick out a 1989 BMW. He then gave the car dealership a personal check for $67,500.
When we saw Aaron Gams a couple times just in passing, wearing a lab coat with a stethoscope in the pocket, you know, you kind of raise your eyebrows and think, well, I don't think too many doctors really go around town in their work clothes.
Mr. Gams' end apparently was a bottle of Lafitte Rothschild. He walked into a local wine and cheese shop, and he tried to obtain a store credit charge. He said he was a cardiologist at a local hospital. The store checked into his background and learned that they had no one by the name of Aaron Gams as a doctor or on staff at the hospital.
The Illinois Department of Professional Regulation started investigating him, and they found that Mr. Gams was writing himself prescriptions. When he would call in for the prescriptions, he would say, "This is Dr. Gams calling in," and then he would go in and get the prescription himself. In 1992, Aaron Gams worked for the Ross Perot campaign as their treasurer. He said he went out of the goodness out of his heart. He wanted to be a fine, upstanding citizen and contribute his free time at no cost to the Ross Perot campaign. Well, those books ended up being in disarray when he left. As one official said, they were in a financial chaos. Aaron Gams was able to walk into Lake Forest and essentially charge things on house charge accounts with nothing more than a stethoscope around his neck to prove that he was a doctor. He essentially just signed his name and gave him a smile. Once he starts, the lies continue. They unravel into another lie, and another lie unravels into another lie.
I think the biggest lesson we learned, just like the old saying, you can't judge a book by the cover. And I mean, he had a pretty good cover. It was just a bad read.
Not even a prison cell can stop Aaron Gams from running his scams. Rebecca Carr, the reporter who interviewed him in jail, says she gave Gams permission to call or collect. But when his call would be accepted, Gams would use the open line to call other people, and Carr got stuck with a bill. Also, Gams allegedly defrauded a fellow prisoner out of $600 in credit card charges. Coming up next on Too Good to Be True, we don't believe in a free lunch. So why do we believe in a fabulous, all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii for 7 days and 6 romantic nights, including round-trip airfare?
Do you really know what you had for breakfast?
A bread muffin.
That has added fat.
Excuse me? Traitor.
Whole wheat toast has added salt.
Salt?
And cereal bars have added sugar.
Great.
Of course, Nabisco shredded wheat has no added salt or sugar. It's pure, crunchy, whole grain wheat that's naturally 98% fat-free. You know what you're getting with Nabisco shredded wheat.
I'm getting some more.
Nabisco shredded wheat. It's just naturally good.
To get to the 1996 Summer Olympic Games, you could start training now or take a break. Play McDonald's Olympic Games giveaway. Just buy a double Big Mac and you could win one of 100 trips to the 1996 Olympic Games.
Sassoon hair. Hair that looks like it's never seen a dryer, never been teased or mistreated, that's led a protected life. Hair created at the Vidal Sassoon Academy, the world-famous center for hair care. Created at home with Sassoon shampoos and conditioners, with a protein and moisturizer complex protecting hair to its cuticle edge. So there's no brush it can't handle, no dryer it can't shrug off. Hair protected by the Sassoon Protection System. Professional care for your hair.
I took the test and it came out negative, when in fact I was actually pregnant.
EPT is the pregnancy test with one simple step and a splash guard to help prevent human error. EPT, so accurate we call it the error-proof test. The error-proof test.
I used to get sinus pressure and headaches with my allergies, but now I relieve the pain and the allergy symptoms that trigger it.
Benadryl Allergy Sinus Headache. Sinus pain relief plus the allergy relief of Benadryl's histamine blocker.
It's like having my life back.
From the headlines, can a rich boys club murder their teacher and get away with it?
If I find out you've lied to me, no one will be able to protect you.
NBC's Law and Order tonight.
In Fremont, California, a different breed of con artist successfully used a variation on the scam. You won a fabulous free vacation. 28 people received flyers that they had won an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii. When they came to a local hotel to claim their prizes, the 28 were promptly arrested. Police had mailed the flyers to people wanted on charges ranging from narcotics violations and drunk driving to auto theft and armed robbery. Said one cop, easiest bust we ever made. That's all we have time for. But remember, if you think you could never fall for a confidence game, you're probably too good to be true. I'm Fred Roggin. Good night.
Now, David James Elliott on flying jet fighters in his new NBC series, Jag.
We were in the cockpit of actual F-14s.
and the camera is moving around with the smoke blowing past the windows. That was quite a setup. It was fascinating. It was wonderful, fun to do, you know, because it smacks of feature film all over. Jag Takes Flight, Saturdays this fall on NBC.
Now, find out how electronic stores are still zapping your cash on Dateline NBC.
It's Wednesday, August 2nd, 1995, and this is Dateline NBC. Tonight,
no steady job for 10 years, a welfare check keeping his family afloat.
Welcome to Michigan Lotto.
Then, 6 numbers changed his luck.